All right, we got Erik with us from Double Edge, the new podcast that. What did you say? It started in.
Oh, just barely like 1 month ago.
Whoa, right on, man. Welcome to the club. Yeah.
Awesome.
So we were talking a little bit beforehand about some of the subjects that you're doing, and it's very organic. You've had your family on. You've done something for yourself, and one of the
Yep.
things you talked about is you were recently married. You recently got married in November.
Yes, and if it weren't for the fact that my ring doesn't actually fit on this finger, I'd be wearing it there. But for now, until we get it fixed, I'm going to be wearing it here.
Right. So it's very much been a learning process for you. Because, I mean, let me just say this. If I was married at 21, good Lord, I would be probably on to my third marriage by now. So, but I'm not. Here I am at 31. So still not even married. I'm engaged, but not
Oh,
married.
congratulations.
Oh, thank you. I bet. Yeah. Yeah.
That's
Congratulate me. I don't know if you can congratulate my partner Jen. She might be like, "Thank you." Yeah, yeah. She's
awesome.
amazing, and I do my
Awesome.
best. So now, what you got married at 21?
Yep.
Was this a high school sweetheart or
No, not at all.
okay?
Actually, we didn't even in the beginning, we didn't even live in the same place.
Hmm.
So she's from Acapulco. I'm from Mexico City. Well, not from, but when we met, I was currently living in Mexico City,
Right.
and we met in a camp. There's this yearly camp we have. So so we met there, became friends, and then slowly things were escalating. We actually went out together for the first time in 2017,
Hmm.
and people go like, "What? You were going out for 2 years before you got into boyfriend girlfriend relationship?" Well, it sounds like a lot. It wasn't a lot because, like I said,
The
distance.
distance. Yeah.
We
Yeah.
went out like 5 times. You know what I mean?
Right.
So in 2019 January we got together, and at the end of that year, around November, we actually broke up.
Mm.
So that's where the interesting part takes place, because and that's the reason on my, the show that I was telling you about, I talked about, well, don't always just follow your heart.
Right.
Like my friend says, bring your brain along for the ride, because honestly things would have worked out fine if we were just a little more patient.
Mm.
Because the reason we broke up was, it was looking like I was going to leave to the States to
Right.
study, and it was looking like she was going to stay there longer than we had hoped. So, it wasn't like, oh, you're my ex, I hate you. No, we're still friends, but
Right.
it's just not going to work.
Yeah.
And 1 year later, pandemic comes along. She's forced to move here with the rest of her family. I'm forced to stay here. So hey, you know what I
Yeah.
mean? We just got to be patient, and things work out. But yep, that's how we finally crossed paths once again and slowly built up the relationship. It was kind of awkward for me in the beginning, but I mean, everything worked out, and now we're married since November 2020.
I mean, hey, that's what you're going on 4 months.
Yes, yep, just
That's
barely.
that's longer than most marriages in Hollywood, my friend. I mean, I'd say you're doing pretty good.
Yeah, definitely. Here we go, man.
Yeah. Yeah, it's definitely a learning process. I know in my relationships, I mean, in this day and age, there's so many distractions. So many the grass is always greener on the other side.
Oh yeah.
And really my philosophy is the grass is green where you water it. So what you put your attention and effort into is what you'll get out of it.
Yep, there it is.
Yeah. So
Absolutely.
and I know in my previous relationships, that's why it didn't work. So there you have it.
Yeah, even I mean, I can't say I've been married several times,
I,
but
I haven't either. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
yeah, but I have had previous relationships
Right.
where it's just a thing of, oh, I want to, and one day I wake up and, you know what, I don't want to anymore,
Mm-hmm.
and
Mm-hmm.
just that immature way of thinking where all of a sudden you have to grab a hold of yourself and say, you know what, you just gotta get to a point of realizing if you don't water it, it's
Yeah,
gonna die, you
that's
know?
right.
So, yep,
And,
that's
and and
great.
this process of understanding ourselves, because I became a teenager when I was 21, so I was a bit of a late bloomer if you get my drift, at least psychologically. But here I am now, and when you find out, there's Mark Twain says it. This isn't me. That there are two important days. The two most important days in a person's life is the
Mm,
day that they're born and the
yep.
day that they find out why.
Why? Yeah.
Yeah, and it's like, damn, that guy knew what was up.
Yep.
So brings me to why I had you on here, and we started this COVID-19 sort of snapshot of what's going on in the world. And it's affected us all, and it's affected us all differently, but also similarly. So I was wondering, you live in the city, and you've actually kind of talked about it. I mean, it sounds like because of COVID, you got married almost as sort of a part of a side effect of that,
Yeah.
a
Yeah.
side blessing of that. How
Yep.
how has it been for you in terms of where you're living?
And where I'm living, Mexico City, it's definitely been a little chaotic.
Mm,
Like social media is just a mess sometimes, but there at least you can see your friends from high school, your friends from all these other groups. You can see kind of how they're thinking. And you can see by the way they're posting that some people are just dying in
mm,
fear. Like they are
mm.
full on panicking. So that's one thing and you can see anywhere and other people just don't believe it. They don't care. They don't wash their hands. I think that's probably not just a thing here. That's probably a thing everywhere.
Right, it is.
But I wouldn't. I would have to talk to other people from other countries to know for sure. But yeah, that sounds about right when it comes to the human race. Some people think this. Some people think that. But definitely in this city, at least in my circles of influence, I have seen a lot of fear
Mm,
because there have been more recently a lot of deaths. So it like gets closer. In the beginning, it was just like, oh, a Chinese guy did this or whatever, and it's like, oh, that's and people here in Mexico City. I don't know if you guys know this or if this is everywhere, but they make memes for everything. Like the earthquake hit one day, and the next day there was like 50 memes about the earthquake. And it's like, oh goodness gracious. I
right.
mean, at least at least you're not like full on panicking and running away from the city, right? At least you have a sense of humor when it comes to anything. But then it started getting closer. Then it's like,
Mm,
oh, the friend of the family member of the friend died, or the
right.
sister of this mother died, and now it's, dude, my uncle died, and it keeps getting closer and
Your
closer.
uncle died?
No, no, no. I'm saying
Oh
examples.
yeah, I see what
There's
you're saying.
there's
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
people's uncles that died, and there's
yeah.
people, and then finally recently I know of family members of mine that were sick, not necessarily they died, but they're sick, and now a father of a friend died, and it's just getting closer and closer, and it feels like, you know not me, but I look at people, and they have this kind of fear in their
Right.
eyes, like they don't know what's going to happen, when things are going to change. So I'd say if I have to describe the city in one word, it would be fear. And I wouldn't be
Mm.
surprised if that's the description of many, many other cities out there.
Yeah, I as a clinical counselor, I work predominantly with children in the elementary school stream, and it occupies a lot of real estate. And you can see that, right? It's almost like in the zombie apocalypse movie, the zombies are really just part of the setting, and there's like this human drama that's unfolding. And here it's like COVID is the
Yeah.
sort of the backdrop, and it's occupying how we live and breathe right now.
Yeah.
And to put it into perspective, when we worry, it overworks our prefrontal cortex, and it makes it more difficult for us to make rational decisions because we're already afraid of what's happening,
Hmm.
which results in people being more reactive, more tired, more prone to distraction. And I think there is this double-edged sword, to kind of use the name of your show, to what is happening, that
Yep.
we are at kind of what I think is a turning point in our own individual lives, that we can continue to watch, Netflix and distract ourselves, or to sit with ourselves in that deafening silence. And I know that's a cliche, but it's because it's true, and
Mhm.
find out who we are and what we're meant to do. Going back to the Mark Twain thing, find our kind of our purpose.
Yeah.
Because when you're left with yourself, the older you get, the more you realize, man, I hope I'm doing what I want to be doing.
Yeah, that's actually another interesting thing. It just made me think of something that happened last year. Well, not that happened like it's one event, but that's
Mm,
happening is people before they had a way to get away from
yeah,
drama, family drama, life, if you must. They had a way of getting away. They'd
yeah,
go to a party, they'd go to school even, to get away with a family, or they went with their friends wherever. This lockdown has forced people to look within. So
exactly.
definitely, I would say COVID is not the only pandemic here. It's like one of the things that has forced us to like really just face our problems, and that's where I feel like people are going crazy sometimes because it's hard to face ourselves, look at the
Yeah.
mirror. It's hard to do all these things, but you're kind of forced to do it in this lockdown. So that's just like one other little thing that I've seen. And oh, have you gone crazy yet? And that's like a question that's constantly running in the friends. Have you gone crazy yet? Have you gone crazy yet? But I realize it's not because we're locked down and just because the door is shut we automatically go crazy. It's not that the reason. The door shutting isn't the reason. It's the mirror inside the house that's the reason. It's just having to look at ourselves, having to realize there's nowhere to run away. All the parties are closed. This is just me and looking at my family, and we either fix things or implode. Absolutely. So yeah, it's
And
it's kind of crazy.
it, yeah, it's such a good point that yes, the door is closed and we're left. The imagery of that, this mirror that we have to look at, and there is no more smoke. It's just you staring back at yourself. Now what? So for you, what has it been for you? What has helped you to not go crazy or to get through going crazy?
To get through going crazy, I think would be my answer.
Me
Yeah,
too. Yeah.
definitely. I mean, it has. And I mean this in a respectful way for
Mm,
anybody out there that's suffering because of the sickness. In a way, I feel COVID, not COVID itself, but what it has produced, apart from all the negative sides, there is a blessing in disguise here because
right.
it's an opportunity to get back to our kids, to get back to our relationships, to really look at ourselves and figure out that why that Twain's talking about. Uh, and for me, it's been exactly that. Before you're just running around. You're running around. You even gained weight probably at the beginning of the pandemic because you're no longer running around. But before I'm working, I'm doing this, I'm doing that. Now all of a sudden my legs were cut off. So
Mm,
I'm forced to not run around. I'm forced to think about why I was running around in the first place. So for me, it was at the beginning of this whole thing, I wanted to keep running around. I
right.
wanted to keep working. But then things felt limiting to me. So it's like, why am I doing everything that I'm doing? And that going crazy part, I can't say I really just went crazy and exploded. I don't think it was that. Um, I don't think I handled it that awfully. But definitely, I think there was a moment that if I
Right.
didn't catch myself, I could have, just gone over the edge and just lost it. But I think it's a blessing that I have a family that loves me and helps me catch myself.
Right.
Um, and that was, why are you doing everything? Why are you doing this project? Why are you editing these videos? Why are you trying to do this? Why are you trying to do that? The podcast. Why? Everything was like, it's not what am I doing anymore? That was before pandemic.
Mm,
In the pandemic, now it was why I'm doing everything. And it was hard to answer those questions at first. And that's where if I didn't catch myself, I would have just gone nuts. But then I realized really is what I'm trying to do, what my dreams really are. And I'm like, okay, why am I sitting around? I may be in lockdown, but I still have my creativity. I can do things. And you can write, and writing is one of my passions that I've had on hold like most of my life. And finally, this is like sort of a blessing. And you know what? It's funny because I tell everyone, oh, storytelling, that's my why,
Right.
writing is my why. I want to do filmmaking in the future. And but really, it's been a year of the pandemic. And ask me how many stories I've written,
How many
because I
stories
was
have you written?
okay. You asked me. Oh boy. No, exactly.
Yeah.
So you know what your passion is. It's not like you don't know. You just don't do it because you're focused on the what, on the people, on everybody else. But finally, I was forced this year, after a year of realizing, okay, I've been doing nothing for myself. Finally realizing I should be, this is what I want to do. Why don't I do storytelling? If I want to, why don't I
Mhm.
write stories? So I just started doing that, and that helps me, asking myself questions and surrounding myself by people who love me. I feel like that is a very good answer to surviving going crazy.
Well, the thing for me that I've struggled with for so long, because I've had so many passions, and I would describe myself like you as a pretty passionate person, having meaningful conversations, learning things. That's my passion. But I mean, I've struggled with perfectionism, and life
Mm,
is just, it's not a game of perfect, it's a work in progress. And the only way that you can progress is by doing it, right? And that's where those distractions come in. That's where, like you say, what am I doing? I'm doing this, I'm doing that, I'm going to parties. And then I realized I don't actually like doing any of that stuff.
exactly.
I love, uh, you know, I'm great. Obviously I'm mindful of how real this thing is and how scary it is. But part of me is kind of thankful for it showing me what's important,
Yeah, there it is.
and just trimming the fat in my life. Because time, and I say this all the time is the ultimate resource, and it is not renewable,
Yeah.
right? The time
That's
that you have is the time that you have. Sorry, you're going to say something.
well, you just mentioned the reason I rambled is because I couldn't find that word that you just mentioned, and that like that's the word I was looking for. Perfectionism. The reason I
Mm,
haven't told any stories is because I'm thinking, well, I don't have what it takes yet. I have to wait for the pandemic to be over, get out there, study my career, do all of these things, and then I'll know what to do, and then I'll do it right, and then that's just such a dangerous way to live sometimes
oh
because you
yeah.
don't even know if you're gonna make it. I know a person. Before I think you're gonna say something, but I know a person that so awful. But the day this person graduated from her career, I think it was the day or the day after, accident,
Yeah.
gone.
Yeah.
That can happen. And what did you do? You're trying to prepare your whole life to do something perfect when you could have been already doing it and do the work in progress. And so that was scary to me. And I think it's not until I realized how many people are actually dying near me that I finally put my life into perspective, thinking, you know what, I'm gonna go with them someday, whether it be tomorrow
Mm,
or in 20 years. I need to start doing what I know I'm good at, and stop making excuses like, well, I'm not perfect yet, I don't have the
mm.
theory, I need to, I like movie making, so I'm just going to do some castings as an actor and see if, no, what is stopping me from right now writing my own story and filming it with my iPhone? I mean, I think we can do that. We're enough hands in this family. We can make up a
Right.
story, we can edit it. I mean, and that just, I think it could apply to anybody. Just start right now.
Well, and the only perfect story is the one that's never made. If you think about it, right? There's always going to be some flaw. There's always going to be some critic. And we have to be mindful of what voice we want to let in.
Oh yeah.
And that's something that I've struggled with, is the voices that I let in. And in the end, I think of it this way. There's always going to be some jackass who's like, oh, what an idiot. He's doing what he likes doing. Does anybody understand how ridiculous that sounds? Like, they're making fun of somebody for doing what they love. That's the stupidest fucking thing I've ever heard in my life. Pardon my language. But anyways, yeah.
Yeah.
And I say that to kids too. I'm like, you know what the coolest thing to be is? And they're like, what? I'm like, to not be cool, just to do what you like doing. This kid
Yeah.
likes singing musicals. He's going to be a millionaire. Jeff Bezos was uncool. He's a trillionaire.
Yeah.
Do not do what they do. Do you, and find out what that is, because that was not taught to me when I was a kid. So the fact that you're 21 and you're doing it, woo, good Lord Almighty, you are going places, my friend.
Thank you.
Now, you were talking about stories, and you're thinking about stories. What are the stories that you want to tell?
Stories that I want to tell. I'm not gonna give details so you don't steal it, but I'm just kidding.
Oh,
I'm kidding. I'm absolutely kidding. I honestly sit down sometimes and just without wanting, you make up stories in your head. And you dream them, and you're like thinking, and you're listening to music and imagining the scenes. Well, at least I do that. I listen to instrumentals all the time and imagine scenes taking place. But when I grab a blank paper, it's like I have no idea what I want to write, and it's just putting the first word down that has to get you to start, and you can watch 1,000 videos. What I did once, and I'm grateful to whoever made this video, but I watched videos on tips on how to write your first story, how to write your first book or your first movie, because interested in either way of storytelling. But tips, and so I'm watching these videos, of tips. That's not writing. And all of a sudden I got to a video where it says, all right, here's some harsh tips for new writers. And they gave some harsh ones. I'm like, oh wow, that's good stuff. And then they got to one where it's like, you need to stop talking about writing, and you need to write. You watching this video, which by the way, click the like and subscribe, but you watching this video is not writing. And I'm like, oh my goodness, this person is so right. Like, doesn't matter how many videos, how many careers, doesn't matter what you do. If you do not put pen to paper, you are just not doing anything. So that was like mind opener for me. And as soon as I put my pen down, I realized I just want to tell stories that mean something. Just like my podcast, if somebody can learn something from a story or from a podcast or whatever, then great. Then I helped do something. I was useful before, whenever God wants to take me, right?
Right.
So I was useful to somebody with a story. So I have stories that I have executed in the past, which I can't say are all that great, but what I have executed in the past is, for example, I made a short film called The Golden Rule. It's in Spanish, and I play a guy that's French, but talking in Spanish with an accent. The reason I did that is because I knew a French person at the time, and I was like listening to them, and I just wanted to try it out. But The Golden Rule was basically about a character that wanted to keep things for herself, wanted to help herself and make sure she was okay, and somebody else was in need, and she's like, yeah, but I'm in need too, and I can't do. But then she finally decided she's gonna help, and even though she doesn't know what she's gonna do with herself, she's just gonna help out, because at the end of the day, that's the right thing to do, right? You can see the details in the story, but that's the right thing to do. And what happened, since it's called the Golden Rule, is that when she was kind to somebody, they were kind back, and other people were kind to her as well. So that was like the Golden Rule. That was that was my first story. I'm also a fan of action. I did one short film where it was just an action fight, basically. But for me, it represented something important, the war between good and evil, And so it was just something fun. It's not like a statement. It's not like this huge statement, but it was fun to do, and it meant something to me. So that's just the kind of stories I like doing. I can say, though, I think I am very inclined to to action. I really enjoyed that.
Well, hey, if you ever need a voiceover, an English dub for that, count me in.
Awesome.
Do you put your videos on YouTube?
Yeah. Yeah, right now
Okay,
it's
so
all
people could find it right now.
yeah, yep. You can find me wherever you want. I made it easy. I am all under the same name, Erik Phil Brown, and that's it. That's all of it. You can find
All
the podcast
right.
under that name too. Yep.
Yeah, I'll have to check that out. I mean, that's awesome. So movies is your thing. What is your favorite movie of all time?
Aw, don't ask me that.
Okay, one of them. One of them. I can give you
One
mine
of
right now. I can give you mine right now.
really?
Easy. Oh, anybody who
Which
knows
one?
me knows what I'm going to say. Lion King.
Lion King?
Yes.
Wow. I love that movie. I mean,
Remember who you
I
are.
can't what?
Remember who you are. That's the message of the film. I
Yeah.
mean, my whole
Yeah.
life I've been running
Remember
away
who
and
you are, and
forgetting
he
it.
he goes, yep, and he goes back to being taking up the throne. That was
Yeah.
amazing. I love that movie since I was a little kid. I can watch it today, and anyone that says they haven't watched it, for me, it's just a jaw dropper. It's like amazing. Yes,
If you don't
definitely.
like that movie, I don't trust you. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah,
that's a terrible movie. Okay, man, we're off to the wrong start here, and I don't think there's a finish line.
no, yeah, I
Yeah.
definitely agree. I actually have a friend that his he well, it's a a, a much older guy, and he says,
Yeah.
"No, my kids have never seen it," and I'm like, what kind of parent are you? It's like, how could you
Yeah.
not? I mean, I can't say it's my favorite though because
No.
I have there's just too many movies out there. How can you make me choose? But I mean, I definitely don't disagree with Lion King being one of the options.
So what's one film that you've seen, and I'll give you one right now. But one movie you've seen recently that you're like, wow, that's a great story, and you got some inspiration from it.
Oh,
Most recent
okay.
one. There, I narrowed it down for you. I made it a
Oh yeah,
fair
you
question.
narrowed it down a lot because with working, I have hardly seen movies. But
Mm,
I'll tell you the most recent one I've seen, the one I just saw 1 week ago. And I didn't really love this movie when it came out, just for everyone to know. I felt like, oh, well, it lacks something. I don't know what it missed, but I think it was just the hours of the night that I was watching it and maybe going in with the wrong expectancies. But did you see Black Panther?
yeah. Oh yeah.
I just saw that last week. I can't say it's my favorite of all time, but since we're talking about recents, I watched it again with brand new eyes, and I was able to
Mm,
appreciate things that I wasn't able to appreciate before. So there was interesting messages in there, and and I feel the villains that are most compelling are the villains that sometimes have a point in some
of
things,
course.
but
I
they
agree.
do they do some things maybe in the wrong manner. So that's where the villain and the protagonist differ. They want the same objective, but they're doing it in a different way. Um, so I really appreciated things of that. I was in awe of why is this a global phenomenon? What's it doing in the
Mm-hmm.
Oscars? The first time I saw it, I'm like, this doesn't deserve that much. I mean, I like it, but come on. But then I watched it again, and it's like, okay, I see. I can see how with certain dialogues that I have recently in my head, I can see how if I were a person of color, I can totally see how I'd be crying at the end of that movie. You know?
And the other thing too is that we see so many movies, and it was hard for me to understand because I'm not a person of color,
Yeah.
but James Bond's always a white dude.
Yeah.
All these action stars, Jack Sparrow, the Transformer, Shia LaBeouf, whatever. Now we have a black character that kids watching this, they're like, sweet, kids who are of color, right? And
Yeah.
and when someone explained that to me, I was like, yeah, duh. Like, why didn't I get that? Right? Because, here I am living in my white privilege.
Yep.
So that began to open my eyes and see, you know what? Representation matters for kids growing up for their own encouragement, right? But kind of like you, when I first saw it, I was like, oh, that was a sweet action movie. But then as I re-examine it again, like you say, with fresh eyes, you see, okay, yeah, this is, I I get it differently, right?
Exactly. You pick on to new things, and I'm sure we can. I'm sure that applies with many movies. Like you can watch it, and it's not till the third, fourth time that you really grasp every little detail. Especially if it's a Marvel movie, it probably has a bunch of Easter eggs.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Well, the other one I was going to say too is you were sorry, you're mentioning about villains, and Darth Vader. Like we get these just monstrous villains that are just so evil. They're seething with evil. We
Yeah.
have to hate them. But then we have these villains who you kind of see their story arc, like you're saying with Killmonger was his name, the
Killmonger. Yeah.
villain in
Yeah.
Black Panther, and how you can see through this frustration, through the heartbreak that he's felt, you can see how he becomes what he is, and that's more accurate to what the villains in real life are. They're people who have been hurt, and to combat them, um, there's a wonderful song, "What's Going On" by Marvin Gaye. It says, "War is not the answer. Uh, love is the only answer to hate." Something along the lines. I'm paraphrasing here, but I heard that today, and I'm like, damn, like I needed to hear that because that is the answer. In
Yeah.
these movies, the way we beat the enemy is by beating the piss out of them. Sorry for my language, but what they really need is compassion and understanding. And I think that you can help people much better that way than you can when you shame them and things
Yeah.
like that. That was my rant. Sorry about that. Yeah.
No, no, that's fine. I enjoyed it. I enjoyed it, and you can actually you grow a little more when you try to understand instead of try to cut down. So what happened? This protagonist, Black Panther, um, Black Panther. What happens at the end is, well, he defeated the bad guy, but he actually made changes to his way of government, his way of being king, because of the bad guy. Like he
Yeah.
decided to make some changes because of it. So I mean, it was cool. I just thought it was nice. It was the most recent one I've seen. That's why I mentioned it. But yeah, definitely,
I
definitely.
like what you said about he sought to understand. And that's what the world needs because there's a lot of divisiveness and division. And when we try to silence voices rather than to understand, why do you think about that?
Mm,
That's when we get some pretty radical, crazy ideas going on. For example, with COVID, a lot of people are like, this isn't really happening. Okay, like let's try and talk about why you think that is. Oh, the government, they're out to get us. There's fear. If we look historically down through the ages, the bubonic plague, it was pretty amazing the primary accounts of what was happening because the priests were writing, the accounts of the bubonic plague and how it
mm,
was rampaging Europe. And there were
okay.
people that were like sticking in their homes. They're like, we're not going outside.
Mm,
And then there were people that were like, that's nothing. Let's party. And they're getting hammered.
yeah.
And that was their response to fear, to a pandemic. And it hasn't changed much
No.
in the 600 years or whatever that happened. I've been trying to, I learned about this when I was in university, and I've been trying to find out these primary accounts, and I haven't been able to find them since, but that always stuck out, that there were people that were freaking out, and then there were people that just didn't care.
Yeah. Yeah. History just it's just repeats itself over and over again.
But we
Yep.
can learn from it.
Yeah, definitely. That I think there was a saying, I cannot remember exactly who or if I'm making this up, but
Go ahead. Yeah,
but
yeah.
the saying, and if nobody said it, then I will take
Mm,
it as my
I
own. Nah,
like
I'm
it.
just kidding.
Sport
But the
it.
saying was the what what we I'm going to paraphrase. What we learn from history is that we don't learn from history. So I
Mm.
think I think I saw read somebody that said that. And it's very interesting because that can seem pretty true. I mean, you look around and it's like, wow, what we can see and learn from history is that people just don't learn from history. And that's very interesting. Like, oh, why is history, how's that going to help me in my life, that just like how is math going to help me? But how is history? Oh my gosh, why? But this is why. This is
Yeah.
why. Because this has happened before. This has happened before, and in many other ways. And yeah,
It will
it's just
happen again.
it will
And
probably not be the last pandemic in this
yeah,
world. Yep, exactly.
I mean, that's a wonderful point that, the point of history is we need to question history too. Whose
Mm,
history are we learning, right? Because there's there's an element of why am I learning about this but not about that? I mean, there was a period in time when people, okay, for example, February is Black History Month.
yeah.
And there was a period in time when in textbooks in like the 60s in the United States and in Canada, there's maybe a paragraph on Black history and what that was.
Mm,
But now we know that, first of all, human civilization came from Africa, right? Started from there. So it just goes to show that we we need to question whose narrative we're learning about,
yes.
and include the other stories as well, which brings up the importance of storytelling.
Yeah.
Because it's not just kept through nonfiction, like biographies and stuff. It's also been kept for thousands of years through stories, and that's what you're doing. So by you creating stories, you're a historian.
That's true. I haven't seen it exactly that way, but now you say it out loud, that's absolutely true. That's absolutely accurate. Yep, you are 100% right. I'm gonna have to agree on that.
There you go, man. So it sounds like COVID has been, you've taken it as an opportunity to grow.
Yes. Yeah,
Mm,
yes. I think I'm of the thought you can take absolutely anything to grow, and not just
mm,
COVID, not just global things, but whatever's happening in your personal home. You know, something you can grow from it. You can learn from something. You can always grow from something, whether it be a victory or a failure, whatever's happening in between. I mean, there's always something to learn, even things you can't control. Like, I don't know, I was telling you about my dad. I had him on a podcast. He's a sick man. His life is a miracle, but he
yeah,
is he is okay right now. I mean, we have conversations, and all of a sudden he's in pain, but we learn how to have peace. There's peace wouldn't exist if there weren't any storms. So
yeah,
so definitely, you just you can either take these afflictions, if we want to call it that way. You can take these hard times as a way to just justify our spiraling down, and just absolutely destroying ourselves and exploding, or we can take them as a reason of why we're going to grow, get stronger, get better, and just fortify ourselves. I think those are the two routes, and it's really just up to us which route we're going to take.
yeah. And th- to your point, you're making me think about gratitude and how,
Mm,
we all think of things differently, but being thankful for our families, like you've mentioned, for God, whatever that looks like to some people. But
that's the key right there. It's just
yeah,
realize what I mean, humans, I think, I was telling my wife the other day, man, if we were just grateful for everything that we'd realize we have a perfect life. So
yeah,
I was asking her, what's a perfect life to you? And it's like, is this a trick question? But yeah, what's a perfect life to you? And to me, I realized that before I thought, oh, my perfect life is when I have my career and I have my
mm,
12 Oscars, and all these things. But then I realized, what if that never happens? Did I never reach the perfect life? And then I just
mm,
just stopped myself and realized this is the perfect life. What I have right now. And it all is up to gratitude. Yeah.
yeah. And it's again to your point, when you're here right now, because that's the war that we face, I think, is the battle between being here, right, you and me, and being kind of in between here and this, right? Technology.
Yeah.
And I'm not doing a holier than thou thing. It's something that I struggle with. I mean, I'm with my daughter, and you know, when you have kids, if you decide to have kids or whatever, but for me, that's my thing. Everybody has different things. But when
Yes.
I'm with my daughter, and I want to make that clear, right? It's you don't have to have kids to find your thing, but for me, that's my thing. And when I'm with her, and like I mean with her, that is just, dude, that's when you experience God. Not to sound religious, but there's just something about like I'm tapping into something beyond me.
Yes. Beyond me. That's like
Yeah.
a key phrase right there. See, when you're grateful for what you have, you're not thinking about what you need. And when you're not thinking about
Mm.
what you need, because you really just don't need it, but
Yeah.
when you're not thinking about me, then automatically you're thinking about others.
Mm.
And what I have said many times to many people is like the best cure to depression or the best cure to this or the best cure to going crazy, the best cure is asking somebody else what you need. Because when you help somebody, and
Service.
this is not just me thinking this is actually me living this because
Yeah.
I have had experiences where I'm just feeling down, depressed, and it's like, oh, what a bad day, you know? But then somebody calls or sends me a text message asking me, hey, can you help me with this? Or can you give me advice on that? And I'm like, oh, I don't want to do this right now. This is like the worst timing ever. But I follow through. And as soon as I'm done with that person, as soon as I'm done speaking or helping or doing whatever, I feel really good.
Yeah.
Like at the end, it's like, why was I depressed? This was amazing. I was useful today. And that is really for me the key. It's just is gratitude and service. That's it, you know.
Mm.
And that like you say, I mean that's really when you when you experience greater things beyond yourself. And that's just awesome.
That
That's
yeah, that's I love that gratitude and service. I mean, it's so simple yet you know profound. And again, looking at my daughter, I mean, what does she really need? She needs food, she needs sleep, and she needs connection, right? She would be just fine without a cell phone.
yeah.
She'd be just fine without all my pretentious things that I own, all my materialistic things.
Yeah.
Yet I, you know, I get something out of them. So it's knowing that balance, and you nailed it, man. Gratitude and service.
It's like we gotta learn how to beat kids again, where everything was just
Yeah,
so
man.
simple. I mean, you remind me of us of when my dad he'd come back from work or whatever, and you know all the big money that he has, he keeps in the bank or he keeps in his wallet. But if he ever had any change, he would just here, Jenny and my little sister, here, have the change. And she would be so happy. She's like, "Oh yeah, I got change," you know,
Yeah.
and so happy with something that will buy her probably just gum.
Mm.
And it's like that makes her happy. I mean, why
Right.
can't we be kids again where we're not just trying to own the world, but really just look around and see that we have so much and exactly what you said. You just need this, and that. Everything else is privileges. Like
Yeah.
I realized my computer, my connecting to the world, my socials, my phone. I mean, that's a privilege that we have in this generation. That's just we don't need it to survive, but it's nice.
And I do want to identify that not everybody in the world has, you know, these privileges that
Absolutely.
we have, right? And that is, you know, my goal is to raise awareness and do what I can to help people, you know, to provide that, right?
Yeah.
So, man, I gotta say, dude, thank you. So I'm looking at the time here. I'm like, oh, 37 minutes, or we're at 45, and you got one at 10. So who's your next interview with?
Who's my next interview?
Yeah, you
Well,
said you had one at 10.
it's more like a meeting. We're having a
Oh,
meeting.
I see.
It's not really podcasting. It's now a meeting about a campaign we're gonna do, and it's actually it's hilarious because it has to do with purpose. So not to start preaching or anything, but we have a church and it's a meeting about that. I'm a Christian, so we actually gonna run a campaign called Live with Purpose, and so
Mm.
that's what the meeting's about. But yeah, that, I mean, that's my passion. Whatever religion, whatever you think, whatever you feel, definitely just do things with purpose. That's what I would say.
Yeah.
That's my message, really, and that's what I want to portray in my films. Not trying to stuff specific things down people's
Not at
throats,
all.
but just generally saying, if you're gonna do something with purpose, because you never know when it's just your last day. Like going back to what we were talking about in the beginning, so definitely do things that have meaning, and stop waiting to get it perfect. Because like you said, the only thing that's perfect is was not done.
Yeah. And the message, somebody said this to me, it was a jewel. I was like, oh, that's good. But the message should be louder than the messenger, because that's what matters,
Yeah.
right?
Yep.
Is the message. And my friend, you're carrying a very good message, right?
Thank you.
I believe in what you're doing. So thank you so much. Now, once again, what's the name of your podcast that you've started up?
I started up Double Edge Podcast. That
Awesome.
is what it is, and you can find it anywhere under Eric Phil Brown, which is my name.
Now, how did you come up with the name Double Edge? Like, what's
Double
the story
Edge.
behind there?
That's honestly, I hadn't really thought of the name. Like I said, well, I think I told you. I'm not sure I said it on the podcast, but um, I was just gonna just have conversations with my name. Like my podcast is my name. Why add anything? But my dad's like, no, you gotta have a name, and I'm like, okay, well, let's look for a name. And then we just thought of this one, and I'm like, I love this one. Double edge. It's like a double-edged sword, and I
Yeah,
feel like
yeah.
that's what words are. You know, words can be to build somebody up or to cut them down completely. So, I mean, I feel like that's what words do. So it's just
Mm.
about being careful with that double edge and
And,
just speaking things that edify.
right. Well, another thing that I've thought about, and to your point, perhaps, is what I say is what I'm hearing, but what I'm saying is we're hearing different things. You're hearing what I'm saying through your collective consciousness, and I'm saying what I'm saying through mine. And there's always room for discrepancy. And
Mm,
that's why it's important to have conversations where we, once again, we seek to understand, not to have this I'm right, you're wrong, vice versa.
yeah,
So
absolutely.
I love it, man. Keep it up. Thank you so much for your time. And once again, Eric, thank you.
Thank you. It's been an honor.